It's Tim Sheets of a TechSpot here, and this is the HP Envy 13. Now this laptop is pretty interesting for a number of reasons, primarily the fact that HP has brought typically high-end specifications like an Intel Skylake Core i5 CPU, a QHD Plus display, and an all-metal body, down to the much more affordable price point for this particular laptop, setting you back around $800. So if you want to get high-end specifications in a laptop, but you aren't willing to pay over $1,000 for something like a Lenovo Yoga 900 or a Dell XPS 13, the HP Envy 13 presents a pretty decent option, and there's a lot of things that I really like about this laptop. I do appreciate the design to the Envy 13 because HP has placed metal in all the key areas. You'll see shiny silver aluminium on the lid, around the keyboard, around the sides, and also on the bottom of this device. The only area that HP hasn't gone with metal is the bezel around the display, and the black plastic they've used here does look a bit cheap. However, the matte finish to the display, as well as the fact that it's not a touchscreen, helps prevent fingerprints from piling up and also helps cut down on glare. The Envy 13 is also quite slim and light at under 13mm and under 1.3 kilograms. It's not quite as small as the Dell XPS 13 by virtue of not having the super slim bezels, but I still find it to be a very portable laptop, particularly in the weight department where it feels definitely much lighter than something like a MacBook Air or a MacBook Pro. As far as ports are concerned, the Envy 13 features an SD card slot, a USB 3.0 port, and a 3.5mm headphone jack on the left-hand side, and on the right you'll find a power port, two further USB 3.0 ports, and an HDMI port. You will notice one key omission here being the lack of a USB Type-C port or also Thunderbolt 3. And while this is a pretty disappointing omission because we're seeing more and more USB Type-C devices coming to the market, it's still not a crucial feature, and if you're planning to upgrade your laptop again in 2 to 3 years, I don't think it will be too much of a big deal, but I ideally would have liked to see one of those USB 3.0 ports replaced by the newer standard. There are two types of displays on the Envy 13 depending on how much you want to spend. If you opt for just the entry-level model, you'll be looking at a 1080p IPS LCD, and if you want to spend just $50 more, which in my eyes is pretty cheap, you'll upgrade that to 3200 by 1800 or QHD+. I got the 1080p model to review, and I thought the display fell behind its competitors, especially when it comes to the saturation and overall color quality of this display, as well as the brightness. It's definitely a notch behind something such as the XPS 13 or the Yoga 900 in both these areas. Also, the lack of a touchscreen mightn't be a selling point for some people who do want touch functionality. The model that I expect most people will be getting is the Envy 13 that comes with an Intel Core i5-6200U processor, which is of course a new Skylake CPU. However, the model I received to review comes with a Core i3-6100U, and this model is not really available in North America, but you will find it in markets such as Europe and Australia at a price point around $200 less than the Core i5 model. In terms of performance, the Core i3 actually holds up quite well, and I think people who want to just do basic tasks like web browsing, maybe a little bit of light photo editing and document editing will be perfectly fine with the Core i3 CPU. The main downside as far as the hardware goes on this particular model is just the 4GB of RAM, and if you really want to do more performance intensive tasks like video editing or CAD design, you'll probably want to opt for the 8GB model and the Core i5 CPU, which costs a little bit more. You also have the option of upgrading to a Core i7 CPU for under $150 more, which I think is reasonably good value, again, if you want to do those higher performance tasks. It's also worth noting that 128GB SSDs come as standard, although you can upgrade that as high as 512GB, and although performance wasn't great, it's still a definite step above a standard hard drive. So far the Envy 13 seems like a pretty typical 13-inch laptop with decent enough hardware, but where does this laptop really shine? And in my view, that is the keyboard. I was actually really happy with the keyboard that HP has included on this laptop. The travel distance on each of the keys is great, as is the tactile feedback, which is reasonably clicky, which for me, coming from a mechanical keyboard on my desktop, is great and really improves the typing experience. The layout's also quite decent, the only downside being the reasonably small arrow keys, but apart from that, I think that this laptop will provide a really solid typing experience across the board. I'm really happy with what HP has managed there. I was also reasonably pleased with the trackpad. It's a little bit smaller than you'll find on other laptops due to the positioning of the keyboard, but I was pretty happy with its responsiveness and also its recognition of gestures. You can thank Synaptics for that one. A couple of other things to note about this laptop: it does feature Bang & Olufsen audio, which is actually reasonably good quality for a laptop and has reasonable volume, but of course it's not going to go replacing a dedicated standalone audio system. And also the battery life, which despite the fact that we're only looking at a relatively small battery of around 45 watt hours, it actually delivers quite good battery life, equaling my QHD Plus model Dell XPS 13 from late 2015 that I've just been reviewing. So from that perspective, definitely quite happy with the battery life despite the smaller capacity. So would I recommend the HP Envy 13? And I would have to say yes, depending on the price that you're willing to spend. I think the real sweet spot for pricing for the Envy 13 is around the $799 to $999 range. At $799, you get the Core i5 CPU, 8GB of RAM, and 128GB SSD, and I think that's a really good deal, but I'd also consider spending $50 more to get the QHD Plus display, and also the Core i7 CPU upgrade for only $130 also seems fairly decent for the price. So if you're looking for the Envy 13, I would definitely suggest keeping within that $800 to $1,000 price range. Above $1,000, I'd be looking at more the XPS 13 and also the Lenovo Yoga 900. You can get a bit higher specs and higher SSD capacities compared to the Envy 13 at a better price. But that said, for a budget laptop with still quite high-end specifications, I'm really liking what the Envy 13 brings to the table. So I hope you all like this review of the HP Envy 13. It's available now to purchase from your favorite retailers. Don't forget to check back on techspot.com for the full review where you can see benchmarks and other performance figures there. Follow this YouTube channel because we've got more video reviews coming for you in the future. Thanks guys, this has been a TechSpot video review.